Thank you, DG.
The last part, Chair, is just around procurement. We said we've eased procurement regulations to ensure that we speedily acquire masks. We've issued 3 sets of regulations from the beginning of this period, whereby we are all trying to ease based on circumstances and environment and timelines. So the current, we emphasizing local produced products. We're saying SMEs must begin to play in the bigger schemes. We're ensuring that all of the people who can provide these things should provide them with speed and agency as per the requirements of the health standards and the World Health Organization. All of that is in place. And finally, the monitoring of thereof is going to be critical. We are going to be meeting with all CFOs of government departments tomorrow to actually lay out the reporting and accountability timelines for COVID-19 related expenditure, and including the procurement process. We'll expect them on a weekly basis to report to us the whole set of regulations, processes that we agreed upon, that we will be issuing out to CFOs tomorrow and accounting officers to make sure that we align ourselves so that this, as Minister said, there's no opportunity to really misuse public funds at this point in time. We will leave it at that, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, DG. All members, we have about 50 minutes to finish our meeting. I'll request that we get some areas of clarification. Obviously, we have 5 committees here, and with the best of intention, we can't do justice to the presentation by the Minister, the DG, and the department in general. So let's deal with the most important things. We're still going to have the second bite to the presentations when the department come to the respective committees. The intention of this was just for us as committees to get to know what exactly the department is doing. So can members indicate those who want to have something? You don't need to say something today, but let's see. And again, we limit the time. I think if we can have 1 to 1.5 minutes input, oral members. So can we see the hands, please?
Thanks, yes. Chair, it's Floyd.
It's Honorable Floyd. Number 2, just hold Honorable Floyd. Number 2.
Hill Lewis.
Honorable K. Lewis. Number 3.
George.
Come again.
Roger.
Honorable George.
Honorable George.
Dennis Joseph.
And Honorable Matafa.
Dwayne.
Come again.
Honorable Dwayne.
Okay, number 5. I didn't get the name, but I'll call you number 5, please. Number 6. Joy. Number 7, Joseph. Honorable Sheikh Imam. Who's that?
Kaiso.
Honorable Kaiso.
Kaiso.
Yes, I got that, Honorable Kaiso. Can we please leave it at that? If we still have time, I'll take the second round of inputs. Or members, please be considerate of the other members who must speak, so that we can also allow National Treasury to respond. We've got a time limit of 1,500 hours. Honorable Floyd Chibambu. Honorable Floyd, please come in.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I hope I'm clear because some of the comments were not very clear from what was said here.
Yeah,
I just want to confirm.
We can hear you very well.
Thank you. I just want to confirm something very clear here, that the 500 billion which was announced by the President, its design is that the only new money which is being proposed is the 95 billion which must be borrowed, because the 200 billion is loan guarantees, like meaning that like those who want to borrow money elsewhere can use the guarantee scheme of government for loans, and then about 130 billion is going to be budgeted, and 70 billion is tax deferments. So those three categories already make it to be 400 billion. So what has to be borrowed is about 100 billion. And then, and it looks like in the priority list of government is to go to the IMF, despite now a revelation which the minister was denying in the public spaces before, that will be interest from the IMF and there will be conditions. What we would want is that the National Treasury must give us what are the conditionalities that are going to come with a loan from the IMF if they are pursuing that route in terms of these interventions, because we do not want to be in a situation we are trapped in an intergenerational debt from the IMF, which have huge impacts in the sovereignty of South Africa to decide its own fiscal and monetary policy interventions in that regard. And currently, National Treasury and the minister seem to be saying that no, we're going to implement structural reforms. What do you mean? What exactly do you want to do when you say structural reforms? Because even amongst yourselves, there is no consensus on that economic strategy which was issued last year in terms of which areas must be looked at. There's no consistency in terms of what is articulated there in terms of the distribution of spectrum, of other interventions. It doesn't speak to what is broadly government policy. What exactly do you mean by structural reforms? What do you want to do, which will then change the economy in a manner to get clarity in that regard? Then the other issue that we want to talk to is policies that guide. The last issue, it's a very important check. Quickly, yes. Under what policy regime is the Solidarity Fund operating on? Like, what procurement laws are they pursuing? Because there's an issue which we raised in the last engagement that there seem to be one imperial company which has got links with the president, which is being appointed to perform all the fund, and that is problematic. If you have got imperial and apparently who are the sole procurers of the Solidarity Fund, which all of us have put money in there with the hope that in terms of what is essential and what is immediate and in a transparent and open way. Can you get clarity in terms of the status of the regulatory framework over the Solidarity Fund? And then we'll make inputs that will transition. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks. Honorable Kelus, please, can I limit you to 2 questions? And if you could read them in just 1 minute, please. Thank you.
No, I can't do that. I'll get the same treatment as every other member of the committee. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
No, Honorable Kelus.
I appreciate that we're under a lot of pressure, but there are a lot of important issues in this presentation, and I will try to be as quick as possible. Director General, thank you for the effort that your team is making. Slide 23, I want to draw your attention to, is an absolute bombshell of a slide.
Honorable Kelus, just before you proceed, I said in immediately after the DG that we'll still have got a second bite from the different committees. We've got 5 committees here, and I think it's fair that we try and give everybody at least an opportunity. So as long as you have got that at the back of your mind. Thank you.
Yes,
please.
As long as that's applied fairly to all members, Chair.
That's what I'm requesting from all of you.
The slide 23 says that you predict that between 3 and 7 million jobs are going to be lost. That is a quite stunning and terrifying slide. And it was brushed over very quickly, and I think that it's important to take note of that. And I just want to ask your opinion on whether you think that more of the economy should be opened sooner to try and ameliorate the effects of that devastating prediction that you have published today in slide 23. Then could you please detail where the 100 billion rand in existing budget cuts are going to come from? You have said that there will be some savings on flights and things like that, but that is relatively small. And you've said that 30 billion will come from provinces, but that still leaves another 100 billion. Please let us know where that is coming from. Then the 100 billion that you have allocated to jobs and small business support, if you could please explain where that is going. We haven't heard, that's a huge sum of money. We haven't heard detail on where that is going. And if you could please update us on your progress with the unions on public sector wage cuts, because obviously those savings identified are now going to be critical. So is there an agreement? How far are you away from an agreement, and what is the nature of it? Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable George.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I won't repeat what questions my colleague, Honourable Hill Lewis, has asked, but I mean, it's very clear that we need to have structural reform. I mean, the IMF is going to require that if we're going to get loans. But I think we need some clarity on what those structural reforms are going to be. I mean, before the virus was even here, our economy was teetering, it was fragile, and it was about to fall over. And here we see the horrendous numbers that are coming. So I think we need to also consider, and it was completely silent on, the biggest failed intervention by government in our economy has been Black economic empowerment. And the question has to be is, when is our economy going to be allowed to be as efficient as it can possibly be without an intervention that has not achieved its objective and is actually preventing us from growing? Then two very brief questions about the relief package. On the tax relief, it's completely silent on salaried employees. For example, everybody that now needs to work from home because they're forced by the lockdown to do so, are they going to be getting some relief for working from home, as would in other circumstances had they worked more than 50% of their time from home? Whether those requirements are going to be relaxed so that hard-pressed salary earners can get some benefit from being locked up at home. And also then on the living annuities, we welcome the fact that there's a bit of liberalization on that. But why can't the deductions be also reduced to zero for members who don't need the money now? Because it's completely inefficient for them to make a withdrawal, compulsory withdrawal, at or near the bottom of the market. Thank you very much.
Honorable Matafa.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. Thanks, Minister and DG. I'm going to be very quick, Chair. On the savings, the 130 billion to be saved from provinces and municipalities, we note that most of the allocations to these sectors lie in infrastructure grants. When we make savings there, are we not running a risk of slowing the public infrastructure program? What measures are we going to put in place to mitigate such a risk? The second one, Chair, is on the borrowing part of the 1 trillion. I just need to know, what will it do to the government debt levels, one, and secondly, the guaranteed exposure, as well as the debt to GDP ratio. The impact on that, I'd like to be briefed on that, please. And then, Chair, still on the 1 trillion, I'm interested to know whether have we used a particular model to arrive at the 1 trillion, or is it merely on the package of interventions that we think are required, or was there a financial model that was used to arrive at the 1 trillion?
Thank you.
The second one,
Honorable Matafa.
Can I throw in the last one? Just the last one. My apologies. Maybe let me skip the rest. In terms of saving of employment, are we considering any tax reforms in order to encourage companies to endure the losses whilst in the pandemic period, so that they are able maybe to claim them in the next financial run as the financial position turn around? Thank you very much, Chair.
There's Honorable who I called number 5. I didn't get the name very well. Please come in, Honorable Member.
Honorable Liz from Scopa. Honorable Liz, you can go ahead.
Honorable Mazambane, please come in.
Okay, thank you. Sanbona, Islobo Sam Lab. two questions, please, for the Minister. The first is the question of funding for SOEs. Is there any further funding going to be made available to SAA as working capital as opposed to debt financing? And secondly, the question of the Cuban doctors, how much is that costing South Africa, and which department will have to pick up that cost? Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Tutoy.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I'll be brief. Can government guarantee that government pension funds and private pension funds will be safe and not be used to finance any initiatives that are COVID-related? On the banks, may banks refuse loans to entities and businesses? Who sets the criteria? And please provide the criteria that will be used. And lastly, please provide more information on the 200 billion for job creation and SME support, and how will it be applied for job creation? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Honorable Joseph.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good afternoon. I just would like Treasury to assist with all the national departments' money for the next 6 months. It will be unspent money on international travel, oversight, study tours, S&Ts, domestic travels. If that national departments could return that money to the national treasury itself. And also provincial and local government that had money planned for the same reasons to their respective health departments, I think, return the money to that. They're not going to spend. The second one, Chairperson, I would like to know what SARS and National Treasury is doing about the illegal trade on cigarettes, because government is losing a lot of money now, money that we think we are necessarily losing now, and of course that doesn't mean that they mustn't go after these people who do illegal trade. What is SARS doing about that? And then the other money that we are losing over a couple of years now is the illegal online gambling. That business and world is going on. Probably have slowed down with the lockdown, but there is a lot of money that goes down the drain. And in that areas, we need to get ourselves really on par with international standards to collect our money. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Can you hear me?
Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Yes. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, thank you, Treasury, for that presentation. You know, a lot of what you're telling us is what we've been hearing for many, many years. Labor-intensive growth is low. We have skills constraints in the country, special planning. Now, what is different that we're going to be able to do? Because we've been complaining about this for the last 10 or 20 years, and I think it's going on for 26 years. But secondly, my problem is that you're giving 20 billion rand allocated to the municipality. And you know the challenges that we've been facing in the country with over 240 billion rand annually lost through the procurement processes. You've already heard complaints in the media of where there's fraud and corruption, particularly there. Now you've given them 20 billion rand in terms of that, and you're talking about for the vulnerable communities. What measures are you putting in place? Why did you not have a standardized pricing, particularly for the PPEs in the country, to avoid corruption at the level that is going? And very importantly, you're talking about water licenses, and that's where I want to express my concern. My understanding is a lot of the water and water boards and licenses in the country are controlled by certain monopoly capitalists. Is that what you're telling us? Could you kindly explain what is the urgency in these water licenses that you are talking about that must be given out very, very in a short space of time? Lastly, you speak about the issue of alcohol and tobacco and things. What you're not saying is the benefit and the positive side of it by restricting the sale of tobacco and alcohol. Kruger's Hospital is a good example, which is empty today, over and above. It is less pressure on the police department, on the justice department, on the social development, People are living better lives, better quality of less gender-based violence, 74% in the Western Cape alone. Why don't you look at that as a positive rather than just bringing in the resources? You're bringing in 10 billion, it's costing you 100 billion at the expense of the lives of all people in the country. Thank you.
Honorable, thank you, Honorable Sheikh. Honorable Kaiso.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. My two questions. Firstly, is the presentation talks about prolonged dislocation of the economy. So I just want to understand from the DG, does this mean that we have to look at the fiscal and monetary policy? That's the first question. Secondly, Honorable Chair, is on structural reforms. How do we assure particularly the public sector and public service workers that structural reforms do not necessarily imply privatization, cutting of wages and salary, and slash expenditure? So it's just those two questions. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much, honorable members. I'll allow the co-chairs, Honorable Mahlangu, Honorable Hlengwa, Honorable Yunus Karim, and Honorable Masangwai, to also come in.
Thank you, Chairperson Mahlangu.
Welcome, Honorable
Can I go
Mahlangu.
on?
Please do.
Thank you, Chair Shenge. Chairperson, my question is on the first question is on the structural reforms. The President and the Finance Minister have referred to the need to ensure that structural reform in the post-COVID-19 recovery phase. And my question, therefore, in relation to this statement, is that while the economy reforms are certainly needed in many of the identified sectors, how do we assure, particularly in the public sector and private sector workers, that structural reform do not necessarily imply privatization, cutting of wages, and slashing of spending? I think somehow is related to what Honorable Lewis have asked, though we are coming from different angles. And how is the government planning to stabilize the economy, further reducing borrowing cost, stabilizing the exchange rate, and imposing measures to limit money leaving South Africa? My last part of the question, Chair, with your permission, thank you. The COVID-19 crisis is teaching the world, including us in South Africa, that there is a need for more effective governance and a more interventionist and proactive role for the state. It is showing South Africa that the state can play a developmental and life-saving role. Therefore, Chairperson, I just want to know from Treasury, what measures are being taken to strengthen and build the capacity of the state so that we are able to survive future disasters that are going to inevitably occur? I will leave it at that, Chairperson, and respect your directive, because I also wanted to speak to the issue of the wealth tax, but I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Honorable Honorable
May I come in? Okay.
Honorable Hlengwa. Honorable Hlengwa. Is coming. Yes, I can hear you. Can hear you.
Three things very quickly, Co-Chair. One, obviously, I think we will still need more time. I think we need to prioritize that. I think Treasury must understand that we are not going to exhaust all the matters today because of time constraints. So I think at the back of their minds, that must be understood. And I think that follow-up questions can be sent in writing for the purposes of ensuring that we are effective. Secondly, Chair, South Africa's debt servicing costs obviously standing at about 229 billion rands for 2020-21. what are the implications of the World Bank, IMF, and New Development Bank loan mean to that, and what's the new scope and the roadmap insofar as servicing those debts are concerned? And thirdly, we obviously dealing with an exorbitant amount of expansions and deviations, and the supplementary budget that the minister spoke about will obviously have to be prioritized. So I would want really Treasury to take us through the frameworks put in place to safeguard the non-abuse of these expansions and deviations. And I think there's many examples where this has already happened. The bridge border post, you've got the tender in Gauteng, you've got the abuse of procurement insofar as the food parcels are concerned. And what is important is sufficient communication taken place between National Treasury and government departments and entities to make sure that they are procuring within the parameters of the emergency spending correctly. So I think that clarity will be required. Thanks, Chair.
Honorable Yunus Karim.
Yeah, thank you very much. Firstly, I think, Comrade Chair, we shouldn't polarize health and economic considerations. In the circumstances, both are interrelated. We need to find the right balance. Not easy, but we can do it.
Honorable Karim, are you still there? Honorable Karim, are you still there? I think we're having...
he has cut. You can move on to the next one. He's buffering. You can take the next one.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Masangai, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanga. Thank you, Minister, your colleagues and our colleagues. Just one clarity-seeking question. The centralization of procurement by National Treasury. Why are they doing that? More especially, even taking powers from provincial and local government spheres. Because provincial and local government are spheres of government. They are not tiers. There's a difference between a sphere and a tier of government. Because there is a constitutional imperative in terms of Chapter 3 that outline the originality of each and every sphere of government, where they derive their existence, their powers and functions. And in that, there is also what we call the principles. And amongst those is Principle 41, subsection G, which talks about the powers and functions of each sphere. Under which legal instrument did Treasury take away powers of departments and the other two spheres of government to centralize procurement? Because I thought Treasury also plays an oversight role. But now, if it wants to take over and do things for department and local government and provincial government, I think in the long run, it's a problem. So it's a clarity-seeking question, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, honorable members.
Chairperson yes, Yunus, you're slowing me 70 seconds.
Okay, please come in, honorable.
Okay, I'm timing myself. Okay, so secondly, I think members are right to raise this thing. What exactly is meant by economic restructuring? Parliament's entitled to know. Treasury should either reply in writing or certainly do so the next time we engage on these issues. Thirdly, I think that people are right to ask, members are, and the public, yes, there may be a need for deviations on procurement, but why won't Treasury come out together with trade and industry to set out what exactly these deviations are and how they'll be managed? And finally, the questions raised about who's managing Solidarity Fund, that's a fair question too. We need an answer. Thank you. You still only 8 seconds, person. I'll carry that over to the next meeting. And finally, Dingledi Mashango, we acknowledge that I can speak within the time limits. Thank you very much.
Thank you, honourable members. Thank you, co-chairs. Just to add on the questions and clarifications. Number one from my side.
Sorry, can I raise a point of order, please?
Please do.
Chair, now I hear you telling us that we've got a time constraint, and the invitation for the meeting was sent out to continue until 4 o'clock. There was also an agreed way of raising our request to ask questions, and that was in the meeting chat group. Now, that hasn't been followed. I believe I was one of the first ones to indicate my request to ask questions. I haven't been acknowledged. Rather, we went for a kind of a school ground bully boy scrum in order to determine who gets to talk. Now, I don't think that's fair, and I don't think we're giving the presentation from Treasury sufficient scrutiny. They've taken their time to prepare the presentation, and I think we'd like to engage with it properly. I don't think we've been given a fair opportunity to do so.
Yes, honourable member, I don't know the invitation you got from our side. We're given 2 hours, but can you please come in quickly and raise the issues that you wanted to raise?
Thank you very much, Chair, although I know there are others that will now be jealous and also want to come in. My first question obviously comes specifically from the Ncop's point of view in terms of the processing of the DORA bill, which we are sitting with now, and we've been asked to try and expedite this process. The question I'd like to ask to Treasury is, how much is DORA expected to change in the adjustment? So what we're dealing with now is just a case of pushing something through, knowing full well that it's going to change in its entirety, or should we give this due consideration and process it properly as we would normally, and then merely wait for the adjustment thereafter? My second question is aimed at the Minister, and just a question to the Minister to ask how much interaction is there at Cabinet level between ministers, because it seems to me like him and the President are perhaps on the same page. But there are other ministers like Minister Patel, Chele, and Dlamini Zuma, who quite clearly don't seem to be on the same page in terms of taking both a health and a financial aspect when considering what regulations to put in place. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, honourable members. My apologies again about the time constraint. I indicated at the beginning that you have got 5 committees here, and so we can't be able to do justice to the presentation. I think we'll follow up in our respective committees about some of the issues. But let me just throw in 2 quick comments. DG, when you came up with the structural faults in the economy, I think we are leaving one very important one, the inequality which is there in the economy. And this COVID-19 has just, again, exposed the economy of South Africa, the way it is unequal. You only spoke about monopolies. But inequality in our country, you know that it's not just monopolies. It also goes along the racial lines. So I think we need to deal that as your structural faults in the economy, which is sometimes responsible for the economy not being able to perform. Secondly, DG, there's a complaint coming from small businesses that they are still not being paid on time. Not about COVID, just that. Can we make sure and come back to this committee and tell us how we are going to, just to make sure that government departments and state-owned companies, they pay small businesses on time, especially this time. We have always argued the question of we agreed on 30 days, but it doesn't happen, and there are no consequences for that. Can you please deal with that, and please come back to the committees and say exactly what you are doing with that? And again, another complaint, I think it has been alluded to by the other members, the access to the COVID-19 funds. Small businesses, again, they are saying they are just being spectators on this thing. They are not being taken into consideration. Can you please take these committees into confidence as to exactly how to ensure that black businesses and small businesses are being considered here? Thank you very much. Can you try, please, there are many questions. And as I said, honourable members, we are still going to have second bite as it comes when they come to our respective committees. Honourable Minister, I don't know whether the Deputy Minister is there welcome, Deputy Minister, if you are there, Minister and your team, and the DG, and the Deputy Minister.
No, I'm here, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, welcome, DM. Sorry.
Thank you very much, honorable members, for your contribution and useful interventions. I'll ask Dondo and his team to respond to some of the other issues. I'm going to return with the some of the policy issues, including that question of the IMF, which I see some members already are tweeting about it and making political football out of it. But I'll come back to that and deal with it. So if you could allow the DG very quickly, don't be long, DG, there's no time. And then I'll come back and deal with some of the policy issues. Over to you, DG. Don't be long. Eh?
Sorry, Chairman.
Yes. Who's that?
This is Jordan Hill-Lewis. I just want to get a firm answer on the question of the time allocation here, because we were informed that this meeting has been approved for 3 hours. I understand that an application was made for this meeting to proceed for 3 hours. We were told it would be a 3-hour meeting. Can we just get absolute clarity? Was an application made? Was that application approved? And why are we limited to 2 hours?
Can I allow the other honorable chairs to come in? From our side, we're definitely told about, that is Standing Committee on Appropriations. It was 2 hours. And we're also told that the minister is also having other engagements with his team. Honorable chairs, can you quickly come in and clarify that one?
Chair, it's
Honorable
Eunice. The notes I got from our committee. Sorry, is it declared? Okay, I'll wait. Sorry. Oh.
No, come in, Honorable Eunice.
Why is Dikeledi laughing when you don't have time? Okay, so as I understood it from Nkululeko, unless I got it wrong, it meant to be 13:00 to 15:30. What I understand is that I think the whips know it. The system we're using only allows for a certain number of committees to sit simultaneously. So that's how they structure the time. But if it's possible, even if the minister has to exit, the DA is around, if it's possible, I don't see why we shouldn't extend it by 30 minutes, bearing in mind that this is also part of an ongoing exchange with Treasury.
Okay. Thank you. And is there any counter view, honorable members? Yes.
There's none, Chairperson. I've not been informed about the time limited. And Honorable Karim, I'm just laughing the way the chairperson is chasing the kids from him. And I have written something on the management chat. I don't know about the procedure. There's something that the last speaker or the last presenter spoke about the processing of the bills, that it needs to be fast-tracked. And we need to understand that as committees. Thanks.
Chair,
okay. Honorable Shangwa.
Chair, if we may just go to that management group, because our understanding was that the meeting is ending at 4. So I think let's just clarify that, and I think let's not try and negotiate an extension. The issue is that the meeting was ending at 4. So I think let's just clarify the confusion on the side, but the meeting is approved for 4 o'clock. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, can management deal with that and come back to us? Can I? But there was also a question of National Treasury and the Minister having another engagement. But can we start with answering the questions in the meantime? National Treasury Minister?
We are more than ready to start answering. Thank you. Chair, I thought I understood you very well when you said this is a first engagement. And in our presentation, we did say that the idea here is that we have to present a revised budget. If one was to characterize this meeting, one would characterize it as a MTBPS in October, and the budget coming in February. And the budget in this case will be whether we show broad numbers in the MTBPS, and we don't go into detail with the estimates, because clearly the process to work through the details is being finalized. And then at the February budget, then we announce. Same thing here, Chair. I think only last week that we worked on a number of 500 billion. One can imagine, honorable members, that some of the details we have not finalized them, because the way the inclusivity of the budget process means departments and provinces need to be fully briefed and fully engaged. What I know, for instance, the 130 billion rand, or say 100 billion rand, is being worked out, and the details thereof, including the details of the 100 billion rand that is set aside for job creation and SMME development and support, etc. So all of these things are loose balls that are still hanging for good reasons. Not that we don't show what we are doing, but it's important to work through the details. If you say you are going to support informal business and spaza shops, what's the criteria in order to ensure that money goes to the right people? What's the policy framework? If you're going to ensure that you create jobs for young people, what is it going to be, and how does it fuse in the long-term plan of government? So I think, as we said, is that the revised budget or supplementary budget, as Minister called it earlier, will come, and at that point, details will be finalized. As said yesterday, for instance, we had a meeting with the MECs for finance. We were talking through the details of the 30 billion as to what impact will that do to provinces. So I think, but for now we have a target, we have got a plan that says this is how we want to spend, this is how we want to reprioritize. So I think, Chair, without answering each detail of the questions related to those aspects, I would say it's important that we firm that up, including the debt levels, including the issues, the debt to GDP ratio, including what exactly is National Treasury saying about what's going to be the impact of COVID-19 and impact of downgrades. What's the new framework? What's the new GDP number? We don't have it now. We have got estimates that we are working through. The impact is unknown. So I think when we say we have to get this process forward, we mean exactly that, Chair. And we have got a target, and we'll obviously approach Parliament in terms of not October like normally, but obviously we have to bring that much earlier in terms of how we answer broadly some of the things. There's also a question about the question about there's a question here. Sorry, Chair, I'm just looking at my notes. We released a government paper last year. What's an economic policy for South Africa? In there, we had detailed structural reform issues that we are outlining, and this paper was deliberated widely, if not only by various think tanks in South Africa, but most South Africans. And we were deliberating making it a national debate last year. And those things will remain relevant. Those things will remain relevant in a post-COVID environment. And all of those are things that we have been saying to ourselves, we need to speed up in a way that we can begin to get benefits of embarking on such. We have seen now, by just releasing Spectrum in the COVID-19 environment, people like Telkom and others have started making maybe data cheap accessibility of some broadband and making sure that it's possible. So it is possible that the ease of doing business can be enhanced when we do some structural reforms. But we are more than happy, Chair, to again share the same thoughts and documents of what exactly do we mean by what structural reform in this context mean for us. And we can include new areas around what you just mentioned, Chair, around talking about the poor and inequality, and bring that as an issue that structurally must be dealt with. And I think one welcomes that. We are putting in place.
DG, your video, please, on. Sorry, Chair.
Chair, I just want to prove to Honorable Dikele that I'm in the office. You can see the background. This is my office in Pretoria. We work hard in Treasury. Sorry, Chair.
Thank you.
So I was just saying that it's important that we ensure that we do structural reforms and follow what we said through last year. In terms of COVID funding, COVID-19 related funds and reprioritization, what we are doing, we met with key departments this week, 2 days ago, not yesterday, no, the day before last week, Monday night. We met with key departments that are going to be spending heavily: education, health, correctional services, and 2 other departments that are going to be spending big time on COVID-19 type spending. And we agreed on broad guidelines that we need to adhere to. We are writing them up tomorrow, and this is all in the direction that FOSAT gave us with the instruction of FOSAT of Cabinet Secretariat to ensure that this happens, including the discussions I had with the AG on 2 occasions to ensure that we put audit measures in place to audit spending around COVID-19 spending, because we think there's opportunities there for wrongdoing, and we must deal with the fact that there's guidelines and rules that must be adhered to as we embark on the spending. So we will be, as I said, meeting with departments tomorrow, DGs, including provincial DGs, CFOs, and basically indicating what's critical to ensure that we spend as per the guidelines that are there. And Chair, Minister did say you talk to policy issues of deviations. Our request, honorable members, when we request that we pass the appropriation budget earlier, it's all with the idea of ensuring that we avoid doing a whole lot of deviations that are being requested now. Currently, we've got 5 departments. The law currently says, before the appropriation bill can be passed, you can only spend 45% of your last year's expenditure. Now, we have got 5 departments, small departments, that have already started spending, that are almost exceeding, and we need appropriation, and mainly because of pressures. GCIS, for instance, is one of those departments, whereby they are doing more, they are spending more in terms of making sure that COVID messaging is enhanced. So it's important that we request that comes through so that these deviations can be dealt with quickly.
All right, now we're going to come out of that National Treasury briefing. They're having to field many questions, political party, committee members asking lots of questions around, why is procurement being centralized by the government? Why is it not being fielded out across municipalities and provinces? Why is it just based on national? Will private and public pension funds be safe from having to make any investment in, dealing with the COVID-19 situation? And then they're asking about the revenue bill. When is that going to be finalized? Lots and lots of questions that Treasury is now currently fielding, and no doubt my colleagues on the other side will continue with that. That's all from us here on the On Point team. We'll have more for you tomorrow.
Bethi uparalyzed kusho ukuthi impilo yakho isizoshintsha emveni kokuba sengilimele ngichitha isikhathi esikhulu ngisekhaya.